Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Ashwin Vasan, the president and CEO of Fountain House. For more than 70 years, Fountain House has been fighting to improve health, to increase opportunity, and to reduce social and economic isolation for people living with serious mental illness everywhere. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our campaign as we launch our campaign, Your Mind Matters, to spotlight stories from our community and from our allies so we can end the stigma surrounding mental illness and build the solutions we need to thrive together. Mental health is impacting us like never before. COVID-19 has isolated all of us, has traumatized us through loss and through illness, and has threatened our social and economic security like never before. But we can't forget that there's been a mental health crisis in our country long before COVID arrived at our shores. Our systems have trapped, marginalized, criminalized, and isolated people living with mental illness, and disproportionately people of color and immigrants, for decades. It took a pandemic for people to realize that while we may not all experience the physical symptoms of COVID, we all experience mental health. So this is an opportunity, a time to fight for a collective future that centers our mental health, one that not only supports but also uplifts the voices of those most impacted and marginalized by the pandemic, and to highlight the systemic injustices it has laid bare. Fountain House is working in multiple levels, from our direct services work in communities to policy advocacy and political engagement at local, state, and federal levels, so we can build programs, raise awareness, and influence policy and resource allocation for mental health. We're especially concerned about our young people who are feeling the effects of the pandemic in significant ways. We know that we must identify their needs early and intervene quickly and effectively in order to prevent the worst impacts of mental illness on their lives and to allow our next generation to recapture their lives and reach their educational, professional, and life goals. I've seen firsthand what this means as the child of immigrants whose family has been impacted by mental illness, what the impact of stigma and lack of support can do to a young person's future. And so the work of Fountain House is more important than ever. But to continue our vital work, we need your support. You can donate anytime throughout the launch using the donate button on the top right corner of the site. We also want to hear from you. Share your story using the hashtag #YourMindMatters and tag Fountain House. Our program tonight shares the stories of young adults who had their education disrupted due to mental health challenges. Their experiences with Fountain House and our college reentry program predated COVID, but their stories are bright spots for all the countless students who are feeling the mental health toll of the pandemic today. Our first story tonight is Arvind.
I was 15 years old at the time when I had my first suicide attempt, and I was in high school in my sophomore year. And in the bathroom, I remember holding the pills in my hand and thinking, what am I doing? Is this the right thing? I turned 17 and I got the diagnosis of schizophrenia, specifically schizoaffective, which is a combination of bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. When I heard that, I had no idea what that even meant. I had no idea how the rest of my life would look like, and I really had not much hope for anything. Going to college meant so much to me. As a first generation born in this country, I just really wanted to fulfill my dream of getting an education, so I just went. I had a relapse. I started hearing voices again, and I decided the best thing to do was go to the college counselor. The police escorted me at the student union building of my first college in handcuffs. Within the next hour or so, I was at the local hospital, and that's where I got a call from the dean of students at the college saying that you're no longer welcome back here. You have 24 to 48 hours to remove your things from campus. So that was one of the most traumatizing parts of my life. And that's when I joined college reentry. So college reentry was a part of Fountain House, and my then therapist had mentioned, maybe you should do something like this. Join a program that helps people with mental health issues get back into college. And that's what I did. I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had no idea if this was even gonna work. I never gave up. That's the most important thing. I always persisted. I really wanted to go to college, and I went back to Lehman College, which is my third college, and I killed it. I'm still killing. I have a 3.8 GPA. I'm a double major in journalism and philosophy. And above all, I'm also able to do a lot more than what, a person with schizoaffective is usually marked with being able to do. I ended up managing a political campaign for the first time ever. I had no idea what a campaign was all about. I never worked on a campaign prior, and I just got involved, and then we won by the biggest margin. But what Fountain House does is that it makes you realize that you're not alone. It's very comforting to know that there's people that do care and that understand on a personal level what you're going through. And the community that's there helps me feel like I'm able to achieve anything. Without Fountain House, I wouldn't be able to go back to school. I wouldn't be able to overcome these challenges. I wouldn't be able to become a political star or learn all these things or be the person I am today. Fountain House has really molded me into the man I am today, and I'm so forever grateful for that.
So my first experience with mental health issues was as an 8-year-old. I tried to kill myself. My name was Michael Bent, a former heavyweight champion, 5-time national champion as an amateur, 4-time champion in the Golden Gloves in New York. Any kid who is suffering with mental health and wants to explore higher learning, those are champions. Let me have them on my team. Those are kids I want. That's where heavyweight minds come from. If they have access to assistance and help and a hand up. You have to be brave enough or lucky enough to have people who see your worth and they can lead you in directions like where you can seek help. I'm Michael Bent, and your mind matters.
Hi everyone, I'm Adam Gardner from the band Guster. Especially in these times, mental health impacts us all. We are collectively going through some seriously hard times, making the incredible work that Fountain House does all the more important. So your mind matters, and thank you to Fountain House and all that you do and everyone who supports them. I'm going to play a little song right now that I hope resonates with each of you, as the main message is things come around in hard times.
Enter a scene that defies description. You say to open your mind and take it all inside, one click at a time. We move through fictions and send our sisters to the sacrifice, cruel conviction. Sinister systems keep us satisfied. These are hard times. I'm breathing in the oxygen. I'm holding it through hard times. I'm breathing out in the ultrasound. Things come around in hard times. 10,000 miles of the new prescriptions. So we open our mouths and take them all inside, one pill at a time, the purest fictions. We send our sisters to the sacrifice with cruel conviction. Sinister systems keep us satisfied. These are hard times. I'm breathing in the oxygen. I'm holding it through hard times. I'm breathing out in the ultrasound. Things come around in hard times. audience goes wild. I'm breathing in the oxygen, I'm holding it through hard times. I'm breathing out in the ultrasound, things come around in hard times. I'm breathing in the oxygen, I'm holding it through hard times. I'm breathing out in the ultrasound, things come around in hard times. I'm breathing in the oxygen, I'm holding it in hard times.
I'm Dr. Ali Sharma. I'm a psychiatrist, physician, mother of two, and mental health advocate.
Hi, I'm Melody. I am 28 and I'm from Martinique. I've been living in New York City for about 10 years and I'm a full-time model.
Hi, I'm Janelle. I'm a Ghanaian American student.
So Janelle, thank you so much for speaking with us today. I'm very excited to have this conversation, and I think it's a very important one. So I'd love to start off. I understand that your mom's from Ghana, your dad is from Queens, and you grew up in some areas that are predominantly white. So just tell us a little bit about your upbringing, where you're from and what it was like to grow up for you.
I kind of grew up kind of reserved, and I was always taught to act a certain way in public because we were one of the only Black families in the area.
I understand that you said that athletics was really an important part of your upbringing, but you had to stop this due to mental health issues. Could you walk us through what happened and tell us a little bit about when you first experienced mental health symptoms?
Yeah, so I played soccer my whole life, all the way up into my first year of college. I got recruited and I played for a Division I program briefly. Following our first season, so around November-ish of my freshman year, I started to experience a lot of crying spells, more so than I'd ever experienced before. I stopped being able to control my emotions or reactions to certain situations, and I just started having a lot more uncontrollable emotions and felt a little bit more out of control. Following that, I got sort of depressed about that, about feeling different, feeling separate from everyone and stuff like that. And eventually it got to the point where I had a situation where I took too many pills, and then I ended up, as a result of that, going to the hospital, and they set me up with a care team back at my school, where I was diagnosed with bipolar.
When did Fountain House come into your life, and what role has that played in your recovery?
My parents were pushing me to go back to school, and I just knew that I wasn't quite there yet. I knew that going from a therapeutic safe space to straight back into stress was never going to work for me. So I literally Googled mental health college students helping or something like that. And I found the college Reentry program, and I was like, whoa, this is exactly what I was looking for. I didn't think anything like that existed at the time. And then I made the appointment to go and get signed up immediately because it was just so such a relief to know that there was just this intermission I could have between getting the help that I need for my health and then going back to school to achieve my dreams. And it was just so nice to know how supportive they were, how individualized the program was. It was really just an awesome experience.
What would you like to tell people about mental health within the context of communities of color?
I would like to tell them you're not alone. There are plenty of people of color who are struggling with their mental health. And while this current health system in place was not originally built for you, you can for sure take things from it and gain things from it. And there is help out there. There are people trying to change the fact that the health system is not necessarily built for people of color. And there's a lot of different resources, like communities like CRE that are looking to change the narrative. And so I would say reach out for help as soon as you can. And don't be afraid to speak on it.
How is that pressure and that cultural myth of like the strong Black woman, how did you live up to that expectation, but also trying to accept your diagnosis and then eventually seek help?
So yeah, it was really hard because my first instinct was to act like I didn't even need help. I didn't want to be a problem. I was in a lot of predominantly white situation areas, I guess. My team, I was like one of 3 Black people on the team. My classes, I would be like one of one or 2 people in my classes. So I felt this pressure to perform well and to look put together and to not fit into any stereotypes.
What was your impression of mental health, being where you're from, within your own communities?
It's not for us.
And was there stigma? Yeah.
It's not for us. It just never seemed like it could happen to us.
I was of the firm belief that Black people did not have mental illness.
Our hope is that this discussion or discussions like this gets replicated by 1,000, by 1,000,000, right? So that we normalize what is mental health and that it doesn't discriminate across race, across gender, across socioeconomics, across so many lines, right? And there's a universality to it, but it might look different, like as you say. And we need to work to help people understand that, and to just understand that it's part of the human experience, right?
Good evening. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Bradley, president of Vassar College, where we have a student body of about 2,500 undergraduates. I've been a professor of public health with a research interest in mental health for about 30 years. I came to Vassar after 25 years at Yale University. Throughout my career, I have watched the lives of young people change and evolve. And recently, I've seen the rising challenges faced by students on campus. I live right on the Vassar campus, and never forget last semester, it was tough in the pandemic with all that isolation and what we had to do for our health. And the day that we told students you could pod with each other, you could pick 3 other students and you would sort of live together like pods, changed the whole campus to allow them to be able to come together and really feel the social support students need. It's no wonder students have been struggling, particularly in the pandemic, but in general. This age, that age in the early 20s, it is the average age for the onset of many mental health issues, including depression and bipolar disorder. Still, for many students, mental health struggles start long before their first day of college and are exacerbated by the pressures of college life. The number of students requiring mental health services is growing at an alarming rate, and many schools, frankly, are really having difficulty keeping up. Consider these alarming statistics. Between 2009 and 2015, the number of students visiting counseling centers increased by about 30% on average, while enrollment grew by less than 6%. Even prior to COVID, nearly 40% of college students reported that they had felt so depressed in the prior year that it was difficult for them to function, and 61% of students felt like they had overwhelming anxiety. Students seeking help are increasingly likely to attempt suicide and engage in self-harm. As schools struggle to meet the demand, some students aren't getting the critical help they need due to long appointment wait times. And even scarier, others are unable to seek out care because of the lasting stigma associated with mental health issues. We must face this crisis, and we have to face it with care and compassion. I am so thankful to programs like Fountain House's College Reentry that helps academically engaged 18 to 30-year-old college students who withdraw from their studies due to mental health challenges. It helps them return to college and successfully reach their educational goals. Tonight, you will meet some of the extraordinary students who have benefited from this program. Their stories give us hope. Hope that one day all college students who need mental health care will receive the help they need. And that together, by bringing this crisis out of the shadows and into the light, that we can end the stigma associated with asking for that help. Please join me in supporting important college mental health programs like Fountain House's College Reentry. The students are counting on us.
It started as more anxiety and depression. It was very deep depression initially. I started to have nightmares for a long time, and that was kind of what initially brought on the break between reality for me, because I was kind of having very bad dreams, and then during the day I was seeing things that were like very similar to the things that I would see in dreams. About a year after I had been experiencing symptoms that I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, I was 18, I had just turned 18. It was absolutely jarring, and I think that mainly the thing is, you know, especially when you're a young adult, being told by your medical professional, like, you're gonna be lucky if you can lead a normal life, like when I was actively looking at four-year colleges, was very discouraging. And I basically gave up on my dream of going to a four-year college because of that. It was a little over a year after I moved to New York that I found College Reentry. The biggest thing was just the camaraderie, meeting people who had experienced the same thing was like definitely new for me. And at that point I had been, I think, experiencing it for 3 years. So just like the helpfulness of you really are not alone in this was everything. And yeah, I mean, I learned a lot of skills from them. I successfully completed my first semester back at school amidst CRE. The first one I had done, which after so many withdrawals was really exciting. I think that there's a lot of skills that they taught me, and just being comfortable talking to your professors has been incredible. I have astronomical respect and appreciation for everything I learned at CRE. It's been continuing, I think, into the entirety of my academic career, and I'm hoping to go to graduate school, and I know it'll continue then too.
Hi, my name is Christina Evangelista, and mental health impacts us all.
In today's world, our mental health has never been more important. There is no shame in saying you need help. There is no shame in wanting to protect your mental health, your children's mental health, and your families.
We can start the conversation in our schools, in our community, with loved ones.
I want to stress the importance of having conversations in our communities about mental health. We have an opportunity to change people's lives, change people's understanding of what mental illness and what mental health can mean.
I support Fountain House because they are doing the work to empower those suffering from mental illness and improve their quality of life. My hope for the future is to eradicate the stigma associated with mental illness, because your mind matters.
My name is ONeil Mahoney. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm 23 years old. Between 15 and 16, I'd started developing, the standard symptoms of depression. There were times where I couldn't go to school. Like I would feel so paralyzed. Along with all the social anxiety I was already facing, along with just not understanding how to navigate being on campus. Like, what time do you register for classes? When do you make meetings with advisors? How do you keep track of your mental health while doing all these college routines?
So I wasn't sure what to do next. It was kind of a huge burden to take on at that point, that realization, on top of what I was already facing. and that really just put me into one of the darkest states that I'd been in my entire life. I was like, yeah, I definitely want to check this out, because I thought it would be an opportunity for me to rediscover what it meant to be a successful student. But at college reentry, it's not just about sitting in front of a book and trying to absorb information. They teach you actual studying skills, like the Cornell note-taking method and putting stuff in Google Calendar and Google Keep, and really just keeping things organized. The skills of emotional intelligence that you learn in college reentry actually are to not only be able to manage your own emotions to maximize on your productivity and efficiency, but it's also being able to empathize with others. I took one course at first with the help of the scholarship that I got from college reentry, and my professor really saw that I was interested in doing scientific research. After coming out of college reentry, you can just visualize these goals and then employ skills and make connections to make them happen.
ONeil, what an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm Dr. Andy Nierenberg. I'm a psychiatrist at Massachusetts General Hospital. I'm a clinician and a researcher. And during my career, many years ago, I actually worked at Fountain House, and I think it just has a fantastic mission. And I'm thrilled today to be joined by ONeil Mahoney, a fellow researcher. ONeil, we really share a passion for mental health research, its ability to improve the lives of people with mental illness. The people who participate in research can be helped. The people who are the beneficiaries of the research that's done really also can be very helpful. So I'm really curious, what have you learned through the research that you've done?
Thanks, Dr. Nierenberg, for that introduction and for listening to my story. I really have learned a lot through the different kinds of research I've done. One of the most impactful things that I've learned, though, is that researchers are right. When we talk about mental illness and the research that goes into furthering that field, a lot of times we don't have people who suffer from mental illnesses participating in that research. And I think it's important that those who suffer from mental illness participate.
That is just great. I think it's really important.
I wonder, Dr. Nierenberg, what is research telling you about young people and serious mental illness?
Well, I think one of the things that we've learned from research and from following people at risk and trying to understand how serious mental illness can develop is that it can happen very young. And all sorts of non-specific things can happen to youth, meaning they can have problems with anxiety, they can have problems with irritability, they can have problems with their sleep, they can have problems with regulating their attention. And these sort of things can be non-specific, but over time, it can become a little bit clearer and crystallize into something that can be a recognizable diagnosis. So there can be some early signs of trouble. The other thing that we know is that, we're holistic beings, right? We're people who have brains in our heads, and everything mental comes from our brains, but it's part of our body. So the main thing is that it's all integrated. It's all one. We are brains, minds, and bodies, and that many of these serious mental illnesses are total body disorders. Ultimately, I think that research is really essential because not only can it help decrease suffering and we can find better treatments and better interventions, but also ultimately, I think it would eradicate the stigma about mental health, knowing that it is a disorder like any other disorder. And I think working toward that shared goal is incredibly important.
I'm particularly interested in a theory that I've heard that zip codes are more predictive than diagnosis codes when it comes to mental illness. Could you elaborate more on that theory?
Sure. Well, it has to do with the the findings that in those zip codes where there's either been discrimination and segregation from racist policies, where there is a lack of housing, a lack of employment opportunities, the schools are substandard, there are high crime rates because a lot of people are unemployed, that fundamentally it's very stressful to live that way. And that when people are living under conditions of constant stress, of worried about their safety, worried about whether or not they have food security, housing security, economic security, that really takes a toll. And the toll it takes is not only on your mind, but also on your body. So these areas are correlated with high rates of obesity and diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And as a result, the zip code will predict how long people will live. The same thing in terms of people being stressed and if they have any propensity to develop serious mental illness, it can happen more frequently under conditions of stress. So it really can be a big chronic problem.
I've actually learned through my research that, over time that can even add up, and you might see a population suffering from mental illness at a higher rate than others simply because they've had a longer history of stressors than other populations. Thanks for sharing all your interesting research insights, Dr. Nierenberg.
It's great to talk to you, ONeil, and the pleasure is mine also, and look forward to talking to you again.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Mark Sherman. I have struggled with depression myself and have seen several mental health professionals over the years.
It can be hard to ask for help at the best of times. This last year has brought trauma that some of us can't even begin to process. It's okay to ask for help. I certainly have.
I just want to stress having these conversations and having these conversations with compassion.
Remind people that that's okay. Check in on them. Check in on your kids.
So if you are in need, if you are struggling, if you are in pain, please talk to somebody. Ask for help. Stick around.
Reach out, help one another, get outside, get some exercise, and remember, your mind matters.
Hi, my name is Amber. I am 22 years old, living in Bed-Stuy. Started getting sick when my dad died that summer of my freshman year. The first time I was hospitalized was my first semester of my second year at Syracuse University. I had to take some time off later on. I moved back home. In 2017, I was diagnosed with schizophrenia. I was diagnosed at Gracie Square Hospital. I didn't believe it. I was very adamant that I wasn't sick, that this diagnosis was wrong, and that I didn't belong in that realm of illness. And obviously I did, and obviously I was very sick, and it led me to try to kill myself. I did my best to get better, go back to school, and that's where college reentry comes in. I fell in love with everybody in that program from the second I met them, and they're just so helpful in every way. They really helped me gain back my self-confidence and my self-control. I'm grateful for the connections that I've made through them, the friends I've made, the mentors I've gained. I'm very grateful for anything that I've learned through college reentry. It was more of like learning the skills to be a student, a good student, not just any student, but a good student in school, especially with all your mental health diagnoses. College reentry has changed my life because I was so adamant to go back to school, but I didn't know how to, and school is so important for me. I feel like
I'm my best self when I'm learning. Best self when I'm learning things that I didn't know before. They've taught me that I can't give up on stuff like my dreams.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Vega. I'm a songwriter, and this is my sister, Allison Vega, and she's a member of Fountain House, which changed her life.
I had been a math teacher and for many years, and then I had a brain injury, and it sent me into, I lost my job, so it really set off one of the worst depressions I've experienced. And back at home, I just started compulsively making things, not sure what they were. And
then she encountered Fountain House and the Fountain House Gallery.
And it's given me the opportunity to share what I make and feel like I have a purpose and a place to go. And, it really has changed my life. Yay. Thank you.
Fountain House is very important to my family. It's allowed my sister Allison to be the artist that she is, and our nephew David to have the stability that he needs. My husband and I are very grateful to Fountain House for the help, the support, and the community that it offers.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ali Sharma, a psychiatrist and mental health advocate.
So I'm Bridget Malcolm. I'm an international fashion model and a mental health advocate.
Hi, I'm Crystal. I'm from New York, and I'm just here to talk about my story.
Crystal, thank you so much for speaking with us. I think your story is a really important one to hear. So let's start early on. Tell us a little bit about your early life.
I have a father who's in recovery now, but as a child, he was still using, and, I took advantage of that as a little kid because I kind of got to do whatever I want.
How did you begin first using substances? And I'm curious specifically, when did it first start? What did you try first, and how did things progress from there?
I started with alcohol, and it was just a once in a while thing. So it went from alcohol, weed to, well, let's try these other things, let's try pills, let's try K2, let's try all these different substances. And then we loved all of those substances, so why not trying to start mixing them? And then that became a part of all of our lives daily, multiple times a day.
For you personally, why were you using, other than the initial stages, right, when you were trying? What did it help you with, or what was the gain for you?
Back then, it was the anxiety that kept me in those friendships and relationships, and having panic attacks so that I didn't have to stay in school or whatever the case may have been in each situation. And then it kind of just progressed into mood swings, which would start off with either I was super anxious or I was super manic, constant going, talking my head off and being impulsive and all of these other things. And because I was on drugs, I didn't really see how they were affecting me unless I was in an extreme state of mind that landed me in the psych ward or in a day program. And something that I always had was I always put myself in those places because I was so scared of myself, because I didn't take the time to understand what I was feeling and why I was feeling it. So I just masked everything with using substances.
Same. From when I first had my first drink, I knew that it seemed to affect me differently. Like I needed it in a way that my friends didn't seem to need it. Like it was kind of like a social thing for all of my friends. But, for me, I went straight to hiding it in my room and straight to just like subterfuge at the age of like 14 in order to kind of just get what I needed to feel okay. Like a lot of things in your story really, really like hit home for me as well. Like, I never quite felt like I fitted in. I never felt comfortable in myself. What was the moment you decided to get into recovery?
A couple years ago, I was doing Xanax, and it was laced with fentanyl. So it went downhill very, very quickly. And I chose to, instead of going into a rehab or anything like that, I chose to smoke weed to deal with the withdrawals, and thinking that it was just going to be like a 1 or 2 week thing turned into smoking all day, every day, up until 5 months ago. So it kind of just got up to the point where I was getting really, really bad with the anxiety and the anger and the mood swings, and all of my mental illness symptoms were just being amplified 1,000 times. And I no longer knew who Crystal was except for anger and anxiety.
So for me, first it was an eating disorder, and then I took Xanax every day for 6 years because I was prescribed it. And it was, because of anxiety. It was because deep-seated discomfort over who I was. And I thought, like, well, all right, this probably isn't good. Like, I don't like being so reliant on it. So I just got through the withdrawal, and then my eating disorder got shockingly bad. And then when that got really bad, then the drinking got bad. And like finally, like a year and 8 months ago is the first time I stopped and was just like, all right, like, what is this? Like, what is this really about? Because like, it's such a classic thing to try and find other ways to handle the discomfort, but the only way to handle it is to face it and to show up for it.
Can you just tell us a little bit about how you found Fountain House and what role that's played in your recovery?
So I was looking for something new, and my therapist brought it up to me, and I didn't really even think twice about it. I said, you know what? I'm going to try. And ever since, I've just been trying my best to help others and finding people that I can relate with on a level that I can't relate with most other people about. And I can't be more thankful for that, because it's really brought me all of these things that I've never even thought someone could help me with.
So where are you today with your mental health?
Honestly, I've never been better. I'm actually learning how to deal with it now, which is healing me more than anything else ever could.
If you had 50 million Instagram followers, what would you want to tell them about mental health?
If I had those 50 million followers, I would do everything in my power to not only say anything about mental health and that it's okay, and forget the stigma, because it's stigma, it's rumors, it has nothing to do with the truth. But I feel like there needs to be a lot more support for teenagers and young adults with mental illnesses. That's the biggest thing that I could ever vouch for, because those are the people who have some of the hardest time talking about it.
That's incredible. I mean, Crystal, thank you so much for sharing all of this.
Hey everyone, I'm Hassan Minhaj, and I'm joined by the wonderful, amazing Ashwin Vasan. We're here to talk about mental health and Fountain House. Ashwin, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey Hassan, thank you for being with us. Thank you for lifting up these issues, and thanks for talking with me today.
I wanted to just dive right in here with you. Obviously, we all know there was a mental health crisis in this country way before the news events of this past year and the pandemic. Let's talk a little bit about how has the pandemic impacted the levels and access to mental health issues, as well as access to, healthcare for those issues.
You're right. For 20 years, we've had this mental health crisis brewing in this country. We've seen people dying of suicide and alcoholism and drug overdose for the last 20 years. And we've seen that really spike with opioids over the last 6 or 7 years. We've seen a progressive, sort of trans institutionalization of people from psychiatric hospitals into our jails and prisons. So we've had major issues in access to mental health care for a long time. We pay about 83 cents on the dollar for mental health care versus physical health care. And that drains the system of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars that could go towards making care more accessible. And of course, that falls disproportionately on the backs of low-income people, people of color, people who are already marginalized. The pandemic has exposed massive inequalities, and it's also caused so much trauma and loss that we're going to be dealing with kind of the long tail of this epidemic, which is going to be the mental health crisis for years and maybe even decades to come.
I'm really glad you say that. A lot of times people don't fully understand the barriers to access to mental health care. Can you kind of elaborate that? Lack of insurance, lack of providers, those sort of things.
Like basically 1 out of 3 Americans live in what we call a mental health professional shortage area, which means that either due to geography or economics or other structural barriers, they can't get access to mental health care when they need it. And that was prior to the pandemic. And so, there's been some sort of kind of strange byproducts of the pandemic, which is that we've actually seen an uptick in telehealth and the access to mental health care increase as a result of digital tools. So we need to make sure that those are permanent, that those digital tools can reach into lower income communities across digital divides. But we have a serious problem with the lack of access to mental health care that predated the pandemic, and it's just been made worse for sure.
How much of this gap is caused by our cultural views of mental health?
We haven't treated mental health care as a priority. We've thought of it as a personal affliction, a personal character flaw, an issue that you got to, bootstrap up and deal with yourself, instead of saying, wait, maybe there are some drivers here that we can affect through policy, affect through resources, affect through better laws, electing better leaders. And I hope we're moving to an era when we're talking about building back better, where we're actually centering that in our discussion. So we've got to bring this stuff out of the shadows, and we've got to make it much more, easy and frank to talk about. And I'm very encouraged because young people, the next generation coming up, this is their lingua franca, man. They want to talk about this all the time. They're talking about it in their schools. And so they're leading the way, like on many issues.
Let's now shift more to rubber meets the road. How do we actually increase access to mental health care practically?
It starts by fixing things like mental health parity. That's like a very basic thing. We actually have the laws on the books, but they're just not enforced. I think you've covered that in Patriot Act. So It's not like we don't know what to do. We just actually have to have the political will to do it. We need to invest in workforce, which means we need to create incentives for a next generation of mental health providers to become mental health providers instead of going into other fields in medicine or going into other fields altogether. We need to ensure that we're recruiting mental health providers from communities of color and from other marginalized groups so that there's enough connectivity with the folks who are disproportionately impacted.
Well, Ashwin, thank you so much for the work that you do, as well as everyone at Fountain House. I think you guys are starting important conversations and practically providing really great care that is so necessary right now. So thanks so much for joining me, man.
Hey, man, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you using your platform to lift up these really important issues.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us tonight for Your Mind Matters. There's never been a better time to invest in mental health because it's needed now more than ever. Donate today to support our mission and create mental health change. As a reminder, you can share your personal story about mental health or raise awareness about your support of Fountain House by tagging Fountain House and using hashtag Fountain House, hashtag Your Mind Matters. Your Mind Matters. Take care of it and of each other.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Vega, supporting Your Mind Matters.
Hi, my name's Crystal, and Your Mind Matters.
I'm Melody Monrose, and Your Mind Matters.
Hey, I'm Hassan Minhaj, and Your Mind Matters.
I'm Janelle Spigner, and Your Mind Matters.
I'm Dr. Ali Sharma. Your Mind Matters.
I'm Bridget Malcolm, and Your Mind Matters.
Your Mind Matters.
Your mind matters.
Your mind matters.
Remember, your mind matters.
Because your mind matters.